helped facilitate our ability to communicate with Slovenians and Slovenian companies. Not to mention, Slovenia's involved a lot more in terms of teaching their youth in the English language. As most of my counterparts or my cousins in Slovenia mostly generated or learned German and Italian or Hungarian language as opposed to the English. That's all changed now, as you'll see with the young man beside me speaking English today. So Slovenia, I will say, is challenged more than most countries, given that it's a small but hard-working population. The capital markets are in its infancy, and therefore collaboration amongst government ministries of the foreign affairs, economic trade, and tourism, and our business associations are important to collaborate. So the financial resources are also very restricted, as we all know, and even the Greek minister mentioned the same. So the ministry, so in working together, for example, the Ministry of Tourism, which is increasing the awareness of Slovenia to the general public, do convert and mention the fact that Slovenia is a very natural and sustainable country. It has one of the highest honesty ranked amongst the world. Yet few people in Canada, until recently, knew even Slovenia existed. But this has changed recently and is likely in part the result of the Slovenian Tourism Board visiting Canada in the summer of 2017 and other initiatives by the Slovenian community. So I even noticed in speaking and going to or attending events that people are starting to speak about Slovenia in Canada. I also want to make notice, on a final note, is the International Comprehensive Free Trade Agreement that's just recently been ratified, and it's still ongoing. But it is important that Canada and the European Union, the countries involved, should understand the benefits and that can be conveyed, that should be conveyed to the Canadian, Slovenian companies and to Slovenian companies. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Doma. Another interesting detail, because you mentioned how, of course, for example, in Canada, couples marry and take both worlds. It's your story, because your wife actually comes from Portugal. She came to Canada as a small girl, but now you actually took the best of both worlds, because, as you may know, and you're a soccer player, Portugal is the reigning European champion in football, and Slovenia is the reigning European champion in basketball. So your family covers all. Congratulations.
I always tell my wife the athletic part of our kids is through the Slovenian side. I just want to be clear on that.
We desperately need some good soccer players right now, so it's perhaps an information we can bring some back from Canada. Now speaking about symbolism, our next speaker, Mr. Blaž Tomc Zidar, is the representative of the NGO with the Slovenian name UTIS, which means impression. But it's not all about impression. You will talk to us about your experience in how Slovenians educated abroad can come together. I can remember, because I work on television, I had a gentleman some years ago as a guest, and he was really complaining. You know, he said there were so many Slovenians studying abroad, so many Slovenians which are really highly educated, but in Slovenia we don't know anything about them. We don't have the list like the Maltese. Now I think this is changing with your NGO, and could you tell us about the progress you made in coming together and making this list?
Of course. So yeah, we're the NGO with the list. That's how we started. First, maybe I'd like to explain what UTIS is. Basically an abbreviation for Slovenians Educated Abroad, which I'll use from now on for time economic purposes, because we're a bit pressed for time. So our society's key purpose and goal, how we were founded, was basically to connect all Slovenians that have obtained an education abroad, were in the process of obtaining an education abroad, professionals, people working in research institutions, and so forth. More recently, we've also had people working in industry. Apart from that, I'm going to touch on a couple of subjects that the first two speakers have also noted on, because we do a lot of complementary things. One of our key missions was to steer the debate away from brain drain towards brain circulation, because we feel that's a much more accurate description of what we're trying to do, how we should move forward, and what's going on. As we've existed about 5 years, I think, and we've had a pretty nice increase in members in each year. And as our membership grew, so did our role. Firstly, as I noted, we started by connecting Slovenians around the world through events that I'll describe a bit later. But then in time we started to identify and disclose certain common problems that all Slovenians abroad were facing, and then started functioning as a conduit that related these problems to the relevant officials, ministries, stakeholders in Slovenia. So in a way we started to represent the interest of this group of people and tried to negotiate better terms on their behalf. In that path, I believe we've had a fair amount of success because of two reasons. One, as I mentioned, because our membership, our strength grew with our numbers, and secondly, because we had a systematic approach on how to deal with these issues. So we gathered them into a concise document, which not only gathered all of the problems that people were facing, but we outlined several solutions, how we feel those problems would be handled in the easiest way, which were gathered mostly by good practices from abroad. We've also established very good working relationships with ministries and the relevant officials in Slovenia, which can be seen from this invitation today as well, for which we are very grateful, but on the other hand, we do feel we bring a fair bit of reciprocity to the table as well. Some of our noteworthy activities, which I would describe, include we organize annual research scientific conferences where we invite people who are working abroad, some of which have never lectured in Slovenia before. We divide them into panels, as any scientific conference would, but then we try to have chairs of each panel from Slovenia, so we try to get any sort of cooperations going, or at least the people to meet each other. We also, the aforementioned document that I mentioned before is UTIS Challenges. That was a really important document which we also presented to the government, and we're cooperating on certain issues at all times. Then it's Slovenia Knowledge Around the World, are these events that we organize worldwide. We're covering most of the European countries. We have several events every year in the US. We've started Asia as well this year, so we're expanding wherever we see our people moving, wherever we see sufficient interest, and so forth. We've also started in the last couple of years with career fairs. We have been approached by a lot of companies working in Slovenia because they would like to have some sort of art type of people, so people who are educated abroad looking for opportunities to come back, so we cooperate with them to a certain extent with organizing career fairs, meetings, and similar stuff. So through our activities, how we fit in this panel, how I see we fit in this panel, is that through our activities we're intimately involved in helping to preserve the diaspora's bridge to our native country and hoping to expand it as well. We believe numerous cooperations taking place are absolutely paramount for a small country such as ours, because a lot of our members, some of them I see sitting here today as well, work in the most renowned institutions, research or otherwise, in the world, and so their experience, knowledge is priceless to us, so to say. And as a small country, I believe we will always have a relatively high outflow of the best people, the brightest people, because maybe it's just it probably is a normal step in their development, and but we see a part of our mission in creating the conditions necessary in Slovenia for them to return at any time they see fit, or if they do not, we want to promote the exchange of knowledge to the biggest extent possible. Thank you.
Thank you. So, UTIS, it's not only the list; it's the whole package, and it's growing, which is very good. But it opened, of course, let's say the bleeding issue you spoke about, Mr. Creek. So when it comes to bleeding, I'll start with you. the brain drain, or let us say the brain circulation. Bridges are built to go both ways. So how do you see the possibility of improving, let's say, the policies of the Greek government to bring also the people back from this bridge? It's a modern issue. A lot of countries are dealing with. How does Greece deal with this? Especially because you have so much experience also with dealing the let's say the old-fashioned diaspora.
Yeah, I want to be very honest. So far.
Okay, you like to stand? No problem.
So far, we can't switch to the brain gain because of our extensive austerity we were facing for more than 10 years. The Irish have a very good program, I should say. And if you come back next year with the diaspora issue, you have to invite the Irish, because they have more than 500,000 people abroad. And my counterpart told me that with their program, they're gaining back about 5,000 Irish per month. It's very, very important. You know that the brain drain is a phenomenon that Greece has experienced since the late 1950s. Those times with workers, but now we are bleeding with high-educated young ones. And yes, it is a main issue for us, because we're spending money for doctors. I'm talking about medical doctors. For doctors, architects, mechanics, IT, and other countries are taking advantage of them. So we spend the money, and they're working abroad. We estimate that approximately more than 250,000 Greeks who left after 2010 are currently living abroad. Migration outflows have risen 300% on pre-crisis levels, as youth unemployment soared to more than 50%. And around 55% of those affected by record rates of unemployment were under 35 years. Under 35 years, we're losing the young ones. 79% of the young ones who are leaving Greece, who are going abroad, they were living in urban areas. The new immigrants follow a variety of trajectories and pathways. Some may live with more permanent settlement intentions, like my son. Others immigrate for short-term period as target earners, aiming to contribute to the family's income, to respond to immediate financial need until things get better in Greece. Many more apply for jobs from Greece, doing jobs, just to survive, but not those for which they have been educated. I should say that more than 50% of our brain drain has gone to Germany and UK, 25% each country. If we look at the distribution of immigrants by educational level per decade of immigration, we can conclude that a complete reversal has taken place since the post-war period. As I told you before, until 80s, we were losing people with lower educational backgrounds, and after 90s, and especially in 2000 until today, we observe the opposite phenomenon, with a clear majority of immigrants being university graduates. The number is unbelievable. some 35,000 Greek doctors, the biggest foreign group of its kind, have immigrated to Germany, according to German statistics cited in media reports. 35 Greek young, educated doctors. We have had mass migration from Greece before, but this is different because it is a real qualitative drain. It is the most high-educated people, as I told you before, living, and the UK and Germany are benefiting when they haven't paid a single euro towards their education. And the only way of stopping the phenomenon of losing the most productive people of the country is, of course, through a process of economic growth. And now I believe that Greece is entering this era. Now we left the memorandums, we said goodbye to the institutions, now we are on our own, we're trying to make Greece a strong economy on our own again, with no loans, and the challenge of redirecting brain recirculation, as you said, it probably is the correct word, recirculation, is to find ways of creating opportunities at home. But not all is lost. Many of the newly mobile Greeks want to return home, and this is the fact. Maybe the two-thirds of them, according to a survey we did. They want to return home once the country recovers. Experts say, with the new skills and mindsets, the immigrants could become, this is a very nice phrase, the change agents Greece needs. So, thank you once more for your attention. Brain drain is a disaster for all countries facing the loss of the young educated generation, and I'm very happy because you said before that the European Union is thinking, and I hope they will do it soon, to post a commissioner specialized for the European abroad. It will help. It will help a lot. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Quick. You said before that diaspora is a Greek word, democracy. Drain is not a Greek word.
Drain, no.
But unfortunately, circulation not.
Circulation is κυκλοφορία.
Okay, yeah. I thought it was Latin. So, okay, so you're back. So that's great.
Quick is not Greek.
I can imagine this. You're from Thessaloniki?
I was born in Thessaloniki, my father of English origin, my mother lunatic from Kefalonia Island.
Okay,
yeah.
That brilliant combination. But coming back to Mr. Sherry, well, what is the answer to this new old phenomena? Okay, before, as Mr. Quick has said, it was, let's say, the muscle drain. Now we have the brain drain. So what could the joint European solution be to this?
Well, first of all, we've had a very...
Could you just open your mic, please?
First of all, we've had a very similar experience to Greece. In the early years of the last century, we had a drain of workers of all sorts to Australia, United States, Canada, and even previously to North African countries such as Algeria, Tunisia, and other places. Migration and the decision for people to leave Malta to better themselves abroad has been going on for the last two and a half centuries. The first time we have recorded history in 1412 in a deed saying that somebody's going to learn medicine in another country. So that is how old migration can be traced in Malta. But we don't look at it that way. I'm an example myself. I migrated, I'm a migrant family. My parents migrated. I was born in the United States, returned back to Malta, became a citizen of Malta, which I'm extremely proud. I returned back to learn political science and the rest, and now I've returned back to Malta. There are thousands like me, and now I'm proud giving my contribution to my country. Some people decide to remain abroad, the second, third generation, and even further on. We can't tell them, listen, you have to come to Malta or you must come to Malta. We can encourage them to come to Malta. We can offer them a bridge between both of us. But ultimately, it's their decision. Whether they're here or abroad in a globalized world today makes very little difference. Why? Because there's communications which facilitates life in commerce, in trade, in all sorts of areas. Malta basically is a very dynamic country. We're facing full employment. We're basically in full employment. We need workers to come in to help us in many sectors where we don't have workers at all. So basically, we're seeing also a trend of migrants returning back to Malta. Intellectual people saying, okay, the situation in Malta is much better, economically very bright and very optimistic, so we're moving to Malta. So I think the key is, as my great colleague said, is economic success of the country. If you have economic success, you almost have a guarantee that you're going to have a return flow into the country. At a certain period, we saw also a phenomenon called remigration. In other words, people that migrated in the 50s returned back in the 70s and 80s, and then ran out of money, ran out of resources, and decided to remigrate. Okay? This phenomenon has stopped in Malta. Very few people are returning back abroad. We're having more people coming back. When I see the containers of personal goods of returned migrants returning back empty, and they're in Malta or in the island of Gozo, where I come from, it gives me great joy in seeing this, because I say, you know, Maltese are returning back to their country, and with all their baggage of knowledge, contributing to our country's growth and development. And now I'd like to say a word on the European perspective. We believe that a convention for Europeans throughout the world would be a key forum whereby countries and member states, not just of the EU, but also of the Council of Europe, could air their problems, share best practices, and also help each other in solving this problem of brain drain. In some countries, it's a severe problem. Okay? In Malta, as I said, it is not such a problem, because we're having people returning back, and our economy is amongst the best in Europe. So basically, the brain drain at European level needs to be tackled sitting around the table, discussing the problems in the areas of language teaching, education, social problems, returning back home to individual countries facing the problems, getting your family members integrated or reintegrated into their home country, putting children into schools, finding a job when you return back to the country. These are the issues that need to be tackled at a European level in order for us to tackle this big problem of brain drain. So, okay, thank you.
Thank you. I would now challenge Mr. Toms Zidar, well, because you have also members of UTIS who still work abroad. Well, what are their basic needs? What can their, let's say, home countries do more and do better in building these bridges to let the brain circulate?
Well, their basic needs differ. We have, very different people in different countries that do different things. Their problems vary. That's why we outlined a document where there are pretty specific details for, different areas where people need assistance or would want change. So it's hard to put that into some context. What we do to make that better is, as I mentioned before, we've gotten to a point where we're big enough that we can have a certain discussion with relevant stakeholders in Slovenia, and we have enough data from people abroad on so many different issues that we can discuss on many different levels what can be achieved, and we've seen. We monitor, because when we gave the suggestions and outlined solutions, then we have a continuous discussion and we monitor what's going on in certain fields, and every year we prepare an update or maybe good practices, so we're not stopping. We try to work towards it, but some things take time. Also a factor which slows things down is that we all do this in our free time. We all have jobs, so we do this, after jobs in our spare time. So with additional funding that we're getting, I mean, at least a decent amount of funding, we can outsource some activities that would take away from like the strategic planning that we think we're the best at, for example, IT, accounting, so step by step we're trying to get even into more strategic planning, and hopefully we'll do an even better job, although I think for time we're doing pretty okay.
Okay, thank you very much. So, now it's working. I addressed you and it's working already. Perhaps some takes on brain drain and brain circulation, the probable future minister.
First, very nice welcome to the beautiful piece of real estate on the eastern side of the Alps, my homeland. I migrated to Australia in '67. I returned in 2002. The problem, age 58, the problem of a lot of diaspora, they run out of energy when they get into their serious age. I'm not saying that I go on a heap, but when you're over 55, you're established, you have grandchildren, etc. So motivation to come back has really to be strong, and you have to be financially independent. Now, into Australia, since 1945 till 1990 or 80, some 26,000 Slovenes migrated. Last census, 2 years ago, 14,600 were still declaring themselves of Slovenian origins. Where are the graves of all who have disappeared? The foreign country has swallowed. Now, the biggest problem I found as a qualified air traffic controller when I came back, nostrification my papers. I could not place myself on a job market in Slovenia. I could have gone to Lufthansa in Frankfurt and be accepted, but not in Ljubljana. 2-year academy, recognized as a university or tertiary education level in Melbourne or in Sydney, in Australia in general, count for not here, where they have only 3 months course. So this is one of the things that I intend to pass on to the relevant ministry for action. Now, this should also happen on internal European migration systems. If we have Italian minority here and a son goes and studies in Padua, when he comes back to Slovenia, because he's a Slovenian citizen, he has difficulty getting the documents recognized. Now, that's one of the major problems which I think that our parliamentarians in the European Union should address. The other very important issue is bilateral agreements on double taxation. Some countries have it, some don't. Now, Europe has nearly 250 million or a bit more of migrants around the world. Italy alone has 24 million. Greece, as the gentleman said, also Malta. This is something that politicians at the European level as well as the local have to take. There is never enough money for a variety of projects. From my own experience in Australia, the old generation from 1900, like in Canada, Pennsylvania, Washington State, etc., they died out. The migration which left in the Nazism and fascism times, so they were interned in different parts of the world. They're also gone. But the third, fourth, fifth generation, that's the pool that we should reach and stimulate them to come. In Australia, there was, at Macquarie University, a seat for teaching of Slovenian language, no longer. Matriculation was also included as a Slovene language, as one can. We don't have that. Now, the new generation of migrants in the last 15 years, that is what I call the brain drain. Because these people are economically qualified or technically qualified, and for example, a factory in Zriče, specialist for tool making, they're losing tool makers. They're in Canada, in Toronto, I know two. I know one in Melbourne, one in Sydney. The door is always open for good working people, and Slovenians are known as a good working people. We don't meddle much in politics, but we had lots of senators in the United States. We had them in Australia and in different other places. So here is on the individual government to make a step, put a hand out and say, shake it, let's work together. If the government uses diaspora only at the time of elections and beat themselves, 500,000 of Slovenians lives abroad, we haven't made one step towards this bridge. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Česnik. Also for raising this issue, which is probably often forgotten, the generational thing. So there are also, different needs regarding the different generations. Any other comments on? Yeah, let us, ladies, speak.
So thank you first of all for this remark. I would like to say something because I'm from Italy, but I migrated myself when I was 18 years old, and I had exactly the same problems regarding certifications. But apart from that, there are also other issues when you decide to study and live abroad. Is that also, for example, I cannot even apply for a certain kind of scholarship in Italy that can allow me to do PhD in Italy or even abroad. So I'm cut off from that just because I decided to study in Germany, have a German degree. And also the other issue is that I cannot even enter the public service. And I think that's really like a pity, because even in Italy, in our political system, I think that we kind of need a fresh air in politics. And also, I don't understand why people that study abroad, they cannot even enjoy and work in diplomacy service. So I think we should consider also this side of, that actually is also positive for young people to go abroad, but they should also be able to go back and have a career in the home country. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your contribution. Gentlemen, you want to say yes?
Well, thank you very much. My name is Amr Musa. I'm from Egypt. I enjoyed tremendously this debate. I have many comments, but I am raising a question addressed to the Greek Deputy Foreign Minister. I felt that he has some negative comments on the issue of migration or the movement of people. Egypt benefited a lot from the Greek community through decades of its modern history. The Greeks are doing fine abroad. They have one of the strongest lobbies in Washington. They are looked at with a lot of positive consideration. So I'm raising a question about why the negative tone in dealing with the issue of migration, movement of people, in particular confusing them with brain drain. There are two issues, two separate issues, perhaps certain interaction among them, but even brain drain is no more brain drain, it is brain circulation as has been shown. So I wish to hear a comment from the distinguished minister about why, if I am right in what my reaction, or my understanding to what he has said, that he was negative insofar as migration is concerned.
No negative feelings about our migration or our Greek abroad. But yes, of course, We are suffering with a brain drain. I don't want to hide myself behind my finger. We have spent a lot of money for these guys, mainly doctors, as I told you before, mechanics, architects. Yeah, probably something went wrong in Greece concerning a decent career for them, and not only the austerity. But yes, it is a fact that we have a very strong community in the States. Yes, we have a very strong lobby. Yes, we are cooperating, as I told you before, with other countries, along with Cyprus, to protect or to defend or to promote our national issues. And what we're trying to do now is to put the brain drain Greeks together with the old migrants, together with the old Greek abroad, so to keep the Greek language alive, for example, which is very important for us, and also to create a new Greek abroad generation, which is more synchronized to the modern to modern Greece. I don't know why you had a feeling that I was harming with my introduction our Greek abroad, our Greeks abroad. Why? What did I say and it gave you such a wrong impression? Now it's my turn to ask you.
I don't want to take time on this.
It's a very interesting point, because maybe I did something wrong.
I don't think expressing an opinion is something wrong. You can express whatever opinion you might wish to do. But my point is that the Greek communities abroad is one of the most successful communities.
Of course.
And they bring a lot of benefits to the community where they came from. That's from Greece. This is the age of globalization. And we are going to see more and more of the movement of people. But what made me think of that, one of the reasons why, when I listen to the Slovenians, they are very positive about it. They want to build something around it, but it is a fact of life. While I always believed that Greece is one of the most active exporting country of people, going everywhere.
Did I say something opposite?
For example,
my only concern was the losing of the Greek language and nothing else. We're very proud for our Greek abroad, for our Greeks abroad, that's for sure. And we're working with them. And as I mentioned, we're trying to establish bridges with the third and fourth generation, invite the young ones to Greece to spend 2 weeks or 3 weeks holidays, show them the motherland of their parents and their grandparents. We're doing our very, very best. Of course, we're very proud. Very, very proud.
I had some comments, but the moderator asked me to continue that bilaterally.
Yes, of course, because we will have a mingling section then outside, and you can perhaps... But I think the thing is that, you know, critique is also a word of Greek origin. So Mr. Creek was quite critical on the present situation regarding Greece, and we can understand it very well. Mr. Toms Zidar wanted just to say something.
Yeah, I wanted to reply to the Minister to B's comments and to the Mrs. in the back. I agree with your points, but I think that's the area where we have made some progress. And economic growth, I mean, the people who migrate from pure economic standpoint, that's a long-term goal which politicians in the room have to focus on. We can't do much about the GDP and people who want better wages. Where we have had a certain amount of success is the, let's say, the low-hanging fruit. Where we have, for example, the work experience, which you mentioned, and even university, the mandatory work that they have to do, we've come a long way on a lot of fields where it's much more easily recognized in Slovenia now. For example, also the public agency, public fund, Ad Futura, their calls for stipends were, let's say, not written in a way for the Slovenians. I mean, they were not compatible with Slovenians abroad applying for grants, positions. We've come a long way there as well with cooperation with the government in making it easier. So I think we are making some progress in that area. But of course, there's much more to be done, and we're always, you know, yeah, we're extending a hand whenever we can work together on fixing any more issues.
Great. Dr. Sherry, you wanted to add something?
Yes, what I wanted to mention is two concrete examples of how Malta has tackled the brain drain. First of all, in Scotland, I just found out very recently, we have nearly 10,000 Maltese living there, out of which 3,500 are surgeons, doctors, of which a few hundred are top NHS doctors and are extremely useful for the NHS system in the UK. In recent years, these doctors who reside in Scotland and throughout the UK, and we have others throughout the world, have opened research institutes in Malta, DNA research institutes. They've created sub-departments within the University of Malta. These all created jobs, opportunities, brought in students not only from Malta but from abroad to study in Malta. So these are the win-win situations we really need to look for. I wanted to ask a question. How many people know Professor Edward de Bono? Yes, good. He is the world-renowned lateral thinker inventor. He's invented lateral thinking, a way of thinking out of the box and creating new, innovative ways of doing things. He's a Maltese. He lives in London, travels and commutes all over the world. Okay, it's very difficult for him to come back to Malta. He's so well established. But obviously, subsequent Maltese governments offered Edward de Bono the possibility to open a world-renowned institute of lateral thinking. And that is what he did in Malta. It employs several numbers of lecturers and people of great intelligence, attracts students from over 60 countries around the world to study in Malta. Basically, Edward de Bono has benefited and Malta has benefited. So I think these are the situations we need to look for, where the situation is that the Slovenian decides to stay abroad, or the Greeks that decides to stay abroad. We need to create these opportunities and think innovatively. And innovation, I think, is the key word in thinking, in business, in economics, in social problems, etc. At the European level, to answer the incoming minister, I think more than ever before, such a fora is needed at European level. This is being advocated by the Europeans throughout the world. So I think such problems need to be dealt with at a European level. If one country or a few countries decide not to fix the situation, the problems will remain. Okay? And that is why we need, like other continents and regions around the world, a regular convention of Europeans living abroad. Because the problems are different everywhere, but obviously the solutions can be brought and converged together to have a better solution for these problems. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Sherry. Do we have any thoughts from the audience? Yes, a lady.
Good morning. Thank you very much for an interesting panel. My name is Isabel Pupa. I'm the ambassador of Canada to Slovenia. As you know, in Canada, we have multiculturalism as a policy, official policy. We value contributions from all communities. I'm very glad, of course, to see John Doma on the panel. Thank you for mentioning the CETA. That's very important for us. I wanted to bring in the conversation maybe another element, because I strongly believe, of course, that diasporas can play a very good role as bridges. At the same time, some countries use diasporas to much more negative effects. I'm thinking of Russia, for example, and the current wars. Let's not go there, but let's talk about other issues that may also be a bit sensitive. For example, political representation, which is based on citizenship rather than residency, or economic assistance abroad. So my question to you, maybe more to the government representative, is where do you draw the line? Thank you.
The line is shifting constantly.
Yep. Yep.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. Perhaps Dr. Gigon, where do we draw the line?
Well, probably that's not $1 million, it's a couple of $1 million worth question. I have no answer. Probably nobody does have an answer, I would say. As we are discussing the whole time, every country has its own policy, its own approaches. Everyone is dealing with the question representation of, in our case, Slovenians in the Slovenian representatives of Slovenian diaspora in the parliament, representatives of Slovenian minorities in the neighboring countries in their parliaments. So those are questions which are probably very difficult and very political and long-term questions, I guess. I don't know if anyone else has any other answer, but...
Yeah, Dr. Sherry, how is it in Malta?
Well, in Malta we have what's called a Council for Maltese Living Abroad. I'm representing that council at the ETTW level. It is basically 15 individuals, 5 which are appointed by the Prime Minister, and 10 come from different areas around the world. They meet annually in Malta. We organize a convention for Maltese living abroad every 5 years, starting from 1969. By the way, Malta is a pioneer in this area. In the 1920s, there were already working groups studying the situation of Maltese migrants abroad. There are a lot of possibilities in Malta for Maltese abroad to air their grievances and their problems. Obviously, it is a problem if, for example, Maltese had to have a full right to vote at general elections, because obviously they are 2.5 times more than we are in Malta, and obviously a government can be determined by Maltese abroad. It's very difficult. So this situation exists in other countries as well, and it's very difficult. So it is on a country-by-country basis. You've got difficulties in different countries, and different peoples look at it in different ways. At the European level, I cannot emphasize further the importance of discussing these issues, because at a European level, if there is a solution at that level and agreed upon, matters can easily be facilitated at a national level. But obviously, the fora doesn't exist, and it needs the space to bring out these ideas and these problems.
To ask you, Mr. Quick, briefly, because we spoke about the strong Greek lobby in Washington. Well, is the lobby of Greece expats quite strong in Athens?
I shouldn't say so, no. No. But we are encouraging, our lobbies abroad. And as I told you in my introduction, we are supporting the World Hellenic Interparliamentary Association. We have 200 members, which means that of Greek origin, elected very important persons all over the world in either state or national parliaments. And also we're trying to strengthen also the network of members of local governments. But we have, for example, Dukakis was Greek, and he was running for the presidency of the United States. Yep. Correct?
Correct.
Agnew.
But he lost.
But Agnew was the vice president of the United States. He was Greek. And we do have very good representation in the Capitol Hill right now, and also in countries starting from South Africa up to Australia. And the point is that the young generation is not interested. And this is something which really concerns us very, very much. Mm-hmm. But nevertheless, as you know, with the Greeks, we started not invading, but spreading our culture all over the world with Alexander the Great. And we are intending to do the same now with our young, brilliant scientists all over the world. This is our new contribution to the world community.
A sort of new Hellenization.
Yeah.
Okay. Good point. Now we can also, that was quite a very nice concluding message from your side. Now we will shortly close the panel in order to give you the possibility to enjoy nice weather and of course the snacks outside. Dr. Sherry, what would be your concluding words?
Well, basically, message from Europeans throughout the world is basically in summary, Europe requires urgent attention as respect to diaspora affairs. There are too many bits and pieces everywhere that needs to be drawn into one portfolio. Second of all, Europe needs a diaspora policy. At the moment, there is no one European diaspora policy. And the policy needs to tackle problems of certificates all the way to problems of integrating into a family returning back home. This is fundamental. This is fundamental. Thirdly, at the Europeans throughout the world, there are 2 or 3 countries who are not represented from Europe, and we urge the countries to send representatives in order to be able to discuss the very important issues. We are in contact with the European Commission, with the European Parliament, with the Committee of Regions, and with a lot of the European institutions in urging Europe to look at diaspora issues as a very important step for the immediate future and for the future of Europe and the embetterment of the European people in Europe and abroad, around the world.
Thank you. Dr. Gigon, your final words, I mean, in this discussion.
Well, I could talk a lot about the business connections we're trying to do with about the conferences we made already, we organized in the past couple of years. I'm actually, yes, trying to be optimistic because I think the Slovenia is understanding the change in the approach to the diaspora and getting new ways of the cooperation. Of course, the brain drain and the brain circulation, maybe this is the answer to this duel we had here before, because the circulation is something that means returning back to your country, your homeland, or working for it in a way, or cooperating with it in any way. So it can be, I could mention, I don't know, Amy Klobuchar, who is a member of the Congress in the United States, or Tanya Plibersek, who is the opposition vice president, I think, and maybe possible future prime minister, maybe, or minister of foreign affairs, and numerous other. Here we have Dr. Gregoric, who is actually works in America and also in Slovenia, so he really builds bridges all the time. There are many examples of good cooperation. Also, honorary council. We have here John Doma. We have a future honorary council, possible future honorary council of Slovenia to Rio de Janeiro sitting with us, and maybe someone else I maybe even don't see. So I see positive moves. One more thing, maybe I want to mention American Slovenian Educational Foundation, which is something fairly new, a foundation which is encouraging exchanges between the Slovenian students and the professors abroad of Slovenian origin, and vice versa, Slovenian descendants coming to Slovenia to study or to do research or do work. But for the end, I would actually want to thank, since we are approaching to the end of this roundtable and also the mandate of this government, I want to thank to Mr. Minister Gorazd Zmalc for his brave ideas and persistence in doing all those projects, because what I'm being positively thinking of or optimistic goes to him, to his ideas as well. For the future, I cannot talk, of course, but of course I look forward to continuation of this good work with challenges, of course. We don't know how to, for example, do the list of Slovenians abroad. I mean, we have certain lists which are fairly small. Of course, UTIS did a great job, and we are supporting them very much in this, because they really did a big progress. But the problem is, someone who is a businessman or businesswoman or researcher somewhere in the world doesn't have to say, hey, here I am, you know, I'm ready to cooperate with you. Even the embassies don't have the lists of all Slovenians who work somewhere or do something. So this is a huge problem which probably never will be completely solved. But we are trying to do something in this way. So really, I look forward also to cooperate with the colleagues here and those who couldn't make it today, to brainstorm, to try to find ways in the future for making our diasporas really bridges between countries. Thanks.
Yeah. Thank you, Zvone. I was really amazed, and thank you very much for the contribution of Mr. Musa, who has already left, that he actually saw this, let's say, positive thinking of Slovenian representatives. Sometimes we import this from our diaspora, this positive thinking, because there are also a lot of Slovenians really critical on everything. So, you know, so we're very good in criticizing ourselves, but sometimes we actually find inspiration in our expats. Mr. Doma, how do you see, let's say, the future of our dealing with diaspora? What would you like to see in Slovenia to change? What would you like to see preserved?
Well, what I'd like to say is collaboration. And that's the biggest part, and that's what I see. In my experience with the minister is we're collaborating, we're speaking, we're talking, communicating, and building relationships. And just like with my wife and I, married for 30 years, it's a lot of work keeping that relationship. Okay, 50 years with the wind show, by the way. So I do believe that if we don't talk, if we don't take the initiatives, which I congratulate all the governments in Europe, having a ministry that looks at people abroad and asks the questions, what can we do to help? We all know the financial part is restricted, and we have to work with that. That's a given. So if we don't talk, if we don't build those relationships, we'll assimilate and that'll be gone. So we do have a lot of work, a lot of heavy lifting to do soon, to collaborate and work together, and I look forward to that, and I believe we'll make great strides in years to come, and that's my comment.
Okay, thank you very much. It's fine to see, you know, you and your lovely wife. It's work in progress. It's still going. So it's after 30 years. Good job. And last but not least, Mr. Toms Zidar, the final words by the youngest member of the panel.
Thank you. Some of the points that I wanted to make, Mr. Žigon already took. We must be on the same page. That's where the cooperation seems to be going good. So I want to touch on 2 points. Today there was still some talk about brain drain. We can look at it, as the colleague from Greece said, okay, our educated doctors go to England and England pays nothing for their education. That's one way to look at it. The other way to look at it, like they said, Dr. Gregoric, which also we recognized with an award last year, he went to the US and we paid nothing for his attainment of knowledge in the US, which he probably couldn't attain here. But now we can try to bring some of that knowledge back. I think there was, what, thousands of students that you've gone through. So that is a better way of looking at things from our perspective. Because Slovenia is a very small country. You drive for 1 hour, you're across the border. We have to take it as an integral part of our development to be, you know, a part of it can be done abroad. It's not a problem. It's cooperation afterwards. That's one thing. The other thing is the list. We're also very grateful for the support that we've gotten from this administration. We look forward to cooperating with any administrations because we sort of grew organically. It was right to mention that the business people aren't going to come and try to, yeah, we're here, put us in your evidence. That's why I think we've had success where others, maybe more official channels, did not. Because we went from the people within each country and we kind of grew. And so we've had success, so it's paramount that the government supports us in what we do and how we do it, and that's the only way we can work together. Okay. Hopefully that will continue.
Oh, that was great. Thank you very much, because you mentioned so many times Dr. Gregoric. He's with us here, a very famous heart surgeon working in Houston for a very long time, but now he has also partly come back and trying to establish a very important institute in Slovenia, which would actually solve a lot of problems we have right now in our health system. So thank you very much, Mr. Gregoric, for coming. Now, that was the conclusion. Thank you very much. If I may, just with power words, so doing the lists and doing the jobs, communicate, to cooperate, learning language. Slovenia can be a very interesting case study also for such questions. Then the European angle and out-of-the-box thinking. Perhaps Mr. De Bono has also some Slovenian roots. We would also need some out-of-the-box thinking, so ask him, please. And of course, everything begins and ends with Greek words. And synchronization is also very important, also within the European Union, different countries, as I said, bilateral. Microphone is also a Greek word. So thank you very much, and thank you very much to our audience. Now, we have also some special Slovenian words, but are very, very difficult to learn, Mr. Quick, so you should start. We have great places like Bled. Enjoy the Bled Strategic Forum. Enjoy the beautiful surroundings and also the weather. We actually ordered especially for you. What you can do now is to mingle a little bit outside with snacks. And please do not forget, if you want to be present at the BSF opening, it would start at 2 p.m. But you should be there, let's say, half an hour prior to the beginning. It's a short walk to there, but enjoy Bled Strategic Forum, enjoy the day, enjoy the days here, enjoy Slovenia, and you will always be welcome here again, even if you're not Slovenians. But anyway, please enjoy and do come back. Thank you very much and have a nice day. And one more thing, if you have your headphones, please return them, because we will still need them for next sessions. Thank you.